Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, there's a few ways that I can start this story. I'm trying to figure out a good way to start it, and I think the best way is just to start it 10 years ago. No, 12 years ago now. I was a 911 paramedic for 10 years, almost 11 years. And I worked a lot of overtime, so it was nonstop on the go. And in doing that, you get a lot of judgment about people. And you have to, right? You have to create assumptions in your mind to work with what you have as a paramedic, in the sense of if somebody's walking up to the ambulance, are they going to do you harm? If you go to a certain house looking at the outside, you have to prejudge, is it going to be safe? You have to survey the scene. You have to just look everywhere and at everyone at all times. Look at their hands. Is somebody going to do me harm? What do I think the medical issue is? Is there egress? Am I able to leave easily? And 10 years of a lot of overtime, that's been really ingrained into me. And as I take this journey, I'm trying to flush that system. And it's definitely a hard system to flush. Thankfully, I don't do that anymore. Now, what I do is I fix cars for a living. And I do it at people's houses. And the other day, I was listening to something about Hinduism, about the Hare Krishna movement. And it was a dark, dreary day. It was 7 o'clock. It was actually earlier than we start, but I was doing a favor to somebody that, long story short, they ended up not showing up, which it's not even part of the story and doesn't really matter, because while I didn't gain anything from that customer, I gained so much more. There was a man, when I parked next to the customer's vehicle, I looked for the key, but the key wasn't where they said it would be, and they texted me later, ended up saying that they'd forgotten to put the key out, but that was like hours later. There was a man, tattered street clothes. You can imagine whatever word you want to use for street person, somebody that lives on the streets, right? That's what it looked like from afar. But he was acting in a very strange way as I got out of the truck, my work truck. He was following some geese, like a herd of geese, just in the middle of town, just walking kind of through them, not touching them, not reaching his hand out or anything like that. And he turned and he looked at me. There was not another soul around. And that 10 years in a dark, dreary day, 20 degrees outside, with a man chasing geese and just stopping and turning and looking at you, and you can't really see his eyes. His beanie's down to here, thick glasses, from afar, and he's just standing there looking at me. So I did what any trained professional would do, is I kept my eyes on him, right? You have to be safe in this world. But instantly, that 10 years of egress and judgment, something's not right with this guy, right? So I stuck my hand under, looked for the key, looked up. The guy was a little bit closer, somewhat looking at me, somewhat minding his own business. And then he went about his business, walking with the geese. And by now, that podcast that I was listening to about Hare Krishna movement was out of my mind, because my heart rate is 10 beats faster, and my cortex is in my brain, or what's this guy doing? I can't find this key. Pretty much the situation is turning into a small bit of chaos real fast. And it's a dark day. I could almost barely see, it was so overcast. And couldn't find the key, texted the customer, nothing back. I looked up again, the guy's a little bit closer, not really paying attention to me. Okay, can't find the key, so I can't do the work. And then I pack all my stuff up, and then the guy's gone. The geese are right next to my truck, which my truck's pretty tall, I can't see over it. And so I'm like, this guy is right on top of me. All my bells and whistles are going off. And I turn the corner of my truck, and there he's standing there with his hand in his pocket. And I looked at him square in the eyes, and I was like, this situation is red. And he got closer to me, didn't say a word, just looked at me straight in the eyes, hobbled, and I was starting to back up, but as well, I was getting into my defensive stance. As a guy, we're all known to, be attack first. As a male in the American society, attack first, ask questions later, aggression before submission. And that's something I have to work on as well. But he came towards me, had his hand in his pocket, he was reaching, he had it deep in his pocket, in his coat pocket. And just when I was about to maybe do something a little bit drastic in the terms of, sir, you need to stand back, or something like that, because he's walking towards me, not saying anything. And he's getting real close to my space. He pulls his hand out. My heart jumps up tenfold. He reaches his hand out like this. And it's corn. And he leans in and he says, they love it. I feed them it and they love it. And I didn't know what to say. He took my breath away. I was standing there just looking at the corn, and then I looked up at his eyes, and I could finally see his eyes. And I realized in that part of all of this is that he probably had some mental health issues. Understandable. I mean, a large portion of our, what would say, transient or people that live on the streets in America probably wind up that way because they have some mental health issues, and the medical system doesn't have the capability to really take care of them. But he's standing there with his corn, and I said, yeah, I'm sure they love it. I mean, yeah, it's definitely good food for them. I remember when I used to feed the geese. And I started that dialogue, and he leans in a little bit closer, and he says, but, he puts his hand down, and he goes, but someone ran over a squirrel over there. And the guy was heartbroken. He was absolutely heartbroken. And I realized at that moment that I wasn't talking to somebody, just an average Joe, which is a horrible thing to say. But as seeing as many people as I have, there's that categorizing again, right? I almost felt like this guy was an avatar. Like a Hanuman type avatar, the Maharaji, if you know what I'm talking about. Where there was that quality about him where he didn't care about anything in the world but those geese and that squirrel and the corn that he was feeding them, and that was his life. And I'm not sure how he survived or anything like that on the streets. I don't know if somebody was there to take care of him, or somebody would drop by, or if there was a Meals on Wheels or something like that. But that guy, to me, symbolized an avatar, and it crushed me inside, because I realized that all that judging and that 10 years of training that I had, I would totally have avoided this guy. But this guy was a spiritual master in my eyes. He was a spiritual master. He cared about the animals when no one else does. Here, no one cares about the geese. They may take a picture every now and then, but they almost run them over. And this guy is walking around feeding them and caring about a squashed squirrel. Here, as a vegan, yeah, I'm one of those horrible vegans, right? Which, if you're watching this video, you're probably at least a vegetarian. Of course, we care about the animals. But the general population is that they almost ride these guys over. Sometimes they swerve to hit them. I've seen it. There was one time I had to really quell my anger. This is back before I really started working on myself. A guy swerved out of the way to squash a prairie dog. He's a big old lifted truck. There's a prairie dog on the side of the road. I was right behind him. Why would you do that? So to me, this guy was in the perfect place for my spiritual growth. To him, it was another day feeding the geese, and probably nobody's paid attention to him in a long time. And the person wasn't answering my texts that I was there to do the job for them. And so I just spent like 30 seconds to a minute with him, just talking with him about, I'm so sorry that you had to see that. It's a terrible thing. And I said, thank you so much for feeding these geese. You know, I'm sure they love it. It's really hard to find food out here. So thank you so much for feeding them. It's a great thing you're doing. And I can't remember how we ended the conversation, but the geese were moving, and so he started moving. He was migrating with the geese. Caricature of a caveman walking with his woolly mammoths, that kind of imagery, which I think is fantastic. If you've ever heard of Mammoth, the legend of the Mammoth Rider, you know what I'm talking about. And I carry two things with me at all time. I carry Bhagavad Gita as it is, which I'll hand out to whoever I think can benefit from it. You can hand it out to everybody, but you only have so many copies. So if somebody's really struggling in their life, I'll give them a copy and I'll say, it's not about the religion aspect of it, it's about the lessons you can learn from the words. Because you can learn something from every religion. As a Hare Krishna myself, I can learn from the Bible. I can learn from the Quran, from Taoism, from Tai Chi, from everything. Everything has a beautiful spiritual lesson in the end. And as I grow in this journey, I'm finding that out more and more. I got in my truck and I started to pull away. The second thing I always carry with me is money. There was a lady one time that came up and asked me for a ride, and my truck is so filled with tools I could barely fit in it. And I said, unfortunately, I don't have space to give you a ride. And she said, do you have any money? And I didn't have any cash on me. And I know she was in a hard spot. Poor thing, looked like she was really struggling in life. And it made me wish that I had money to give her. And I stopped that job. I went to an ATM and I got $20, but by then I think she had found her ride and she was gone. So I pulled out that $20, and as I was driving away, I stopped near him, and I had to be careful because we were with the geese, and I didn't want to run the geese over. It would have broken his heart, and I definitely didn't want that after he taught me so much. And I rolled the window down, and he looked at me, and I said, "Come here." And, "Oh, me? Yeah, come over here." And he hobbled towards me as he had done before, but this time we were in great admiration of each other. And he didn't even care about my truck. He didn't care about anything. He just wanted to feed those geese. And I took out the $20 and I handed him the $20. And that made his world. And I said, here's some money for the geese. You can buy him a big bag of food if you want to. And that made his world. He was tearing up because I had just opened the door for him to enjoy the rest of the day with these fine animals. And that was fantastic. And it's the least I could do for him, teaching me so much, the judgmental aspect that I really have to kill inside of myself. Because what started off as me keeping my distance, thinking this man's up to no good, he was actually my guru. He's actually a spiritual master to me, an avatar